Welcome to the Iowa.NET user group. You heard me catching up with an old friend. Paige and I had worked at Industrial Logic together. We didn't work on the same projects, but we were in book clubs. So we got to hang out at least once a week for an hour or two and talk a lot, and then would catch up in other areas as well. And that's really why I'm so excited that Paige is joining us today from the West Coast. Sharing some of the ideas that he's been having and learning about being able to kind of work the way that you want and find better approaches. So I'm really excited to hear some things that he has to say. And
yeah. All right. Now let's turn, what I say, desktop 1, right?
Here we go.
Oh, or you can just look at my desktop. Oh, dang, I got to do this one more time. Hold on. I had it up. There we go. Let's do this. Sorry.
We'll edit that later.
Got to do this. And got to make sure that that's, oh, this is fun. I want to make sure that that is, sorry. It was fine just a few minutes ago. What'd you do, Dustin?
Yeah. Like I said, we'll edit this later. We'll put in the SpongeBob SquarePants 3 minutes later. Okay.
So thank you. My name is Paige Watson. I'm a senior technical consultant at Industrial Logic. I used to work with Dustin and really enjoyed that, even though we didn't work on stuff together. Really had a good time meeting you and hanging out with you last year in Tennessee. That was awesome. Where to start? Yeah, so I'm going to talk about some things we did at a company in Seattle a few years ago, and how we were basically given the ability to choose how we wanted to work, and ended up doing some great stuff. I'm just putting this talk together. It's, I talk about, it's called Fast Agile. I talk about it a lot and in a lot of places, but this is the first time I've run these slides. So bear with me as I go through. I'm still trying to figure out how the story fits together in a really great way. And so if it jumps around, let me know. We can, I like to have a discussion. I like to be a discussion where I tell you something, you go, well, wait a minute, and then we talk about it. So feel free to raise your hand, and we can stop at any time and talk about it. I also want to see if I can get this going. Okay, I also want to, hello, computer, use Slido. If you haven't used Slido before, you just open up a browser and go to slido.com and enter this number. It's an interactive way to sort of add a bit to your presentation. That number is going to be on all of the slides with the questions and stuff. So it might work, it might not, but let's try it out. Let's give it a test. I like to start my talks with what I call 3 truths and a lie. Excuse me. So the truths are, when I was writing this 5,000 plus basic file that I had it was in Basic magazine. I was a teenager, and it was supposed to render a picture of Farrah Fawcett. And I finished putting this whole thing into my Atari 800 with the basic ROM cartridge. And there was an error somewhere, and it wouldn't compile and it wouldn't run. And I just about gave up programming forever right then. In 2000, I'd heard about XP development and pairing and that sort of thing. And so there was another programmer that I was working with, and I said, hey, this pairing thing is kind of cool. Do you want to try it out? And he just looked at me and started laughing. I left a very lucrative career in the adult entertainment industry to teach the world to build better software. No matter how much money you're making, if it's not really what you want to do in the end, you end up going someplace where you feel you're making a difference. And And so here I am. I'm one of only 2 people in the world to attain the extremely hard to get certification of certified fast instructor. I actually have my certification. Usually I keep it on my desk, but I don't, just so I can flaunt it to everyone, but I don't see it here. It's probably inside. And then I've played in several bands with internationally known rock stars. So let's open up Slido and see if this works. Tell me which one you think is the lie. I'm going to give you a few minutes or little bit of time there to see, and I'm going to have a drink of my beer. And should we see what everybody thinks here?
By the way, who else is feeling that we're one off, right? 3 truths and a lie equals 4, and we've got this off by 1 error here.
Yeah, I keep waiting for someone to point that out, and sometimes they do, and most of the time everybody just stays silent.
I can see people twitching.
Yeah, it's my little joke on all of you, I guess. So, all right, yeah. So you all lose. I actually in 2000. I was working at an insurance company in Washington State, not the one I'm going to talk about, but it was called a Mutual of Enumclaw, and we were porting their current HTML website to actually use ASP.NET. It had just come out, version 1.0. It just came out, and yeah, and I had one of the other guys came to me and said, "Have you heard about this XP thing? It sounds really cool, like it's like two developers working on this same computer. Like, you want to try that?" And I was like, ha, 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 idiot, no. And so then here I am, a couple decades later, and this is what I do. I teach people to do good practices and write quality software using quality craft practices. So we can talk about any of those if you want later on. But we know Slido works. So let's talk about Premera Blue Cross. Premera Blue Cross is the Washington State Blue Cross insurance company. When I joined them, I was on a team of about 20 people. It was a T-shaped team. Are you familiar with that term, T-shaped? If you think about a bar across the top, this is a knowledge of programming and writing code and software development. We all have an understanding of writing code in some sort. We all have an understanding of the basic processes of creating applications. Then the spike going down is like your strength in development, operations, test, business analysts, leadership, process. Some people are better at things than other people. And when you talk about a T-shaped team, you really want to have that one bar across the top where everybody fits, and then all the spikes going down, you fill in the gaps so that you have a fully rounded team. So we had a really great leader who was he was a director. He was the manager above us. I was going to say, our job was to write a survey engine and a mobile app. We were using C#, Azure, and SQL Server, and a couple other Microsoft things. Since we're in Seattle, everything was Microsoft. Except for the database. The database we had was this giant old mainframe thing that had been around for years because, it was an old insurance company. So we did have a really great manager, a director who didn't want to tell us what to do. He wanted to allow us he wanted to allow us to do the work that we needed to do to write and create the great software. We had a really great group of developers that wanted to do more than just show up and write code. right? So one of the really interesting things when I started there, we had been given the ability to sort of like, it was a greenfield team originally. So we'd been given the ability to choose our titles, like how are we going to set this up? Are we going to have like junior developer, senior developer, tester, 1, 2, 3, whatever. And as a team, we got together and talked about this, and we came up with the answer of all of us had the same title of solutions providers. So it didn't matter what you were stronger at. Everybody on the team had the same level and title. We were all solutions providers. And so that kind of set the stage for the whole process. So before I go further, and I haven't got a lot of these, but I want to get some ideas of what makes a great workplace or a great team, right? Great teams, great workplaces you've been, what made them great? What kind of things, or where you're working now? And we're not going to wait for these are going to pop up as we go, but I think there's a lots of different answers here. Yes, motivation 3.0, the purpose, autonomy, mastery, fabulous, definitely important, right? In fact, I have got a slide on that, so good call. Somebody gets a star for the day. Yeah, innovation and collaboration. I would say not even just amongst engineers, but amongst everyone. Quick feedback from fast iterations, most definitely. Got a couple people typing, so we'll let them see what they can come up with. Yeah, purpose, growth, challenge. We're kind of sort of rotating around the same ideas, which is excellent. So I think there will be different types of questions that come out of this. So that'll be excellent. Self-management among the team and focus on the human aspect of relatedness. That is, all of these things that we are saying definitely, you definitely have to have a great team. It really, I think, and I'm kind of going off topic here, but I really think it comes down to that trust and collaboration and communication aspect, and the code that you write and the processes that you use and all that sort of thing fall into place if you have that. So fabulous. Let's see where I'm going. Oh yeah. One of the things that we did and that I think is always important to make a great team is team chartering. Has anybody done this? Have you done this on your teams? Do you know what this is? Have we heard of this? I'm gonna guess by the silence that the answer is no. I'm gonna open up the chat. Maybe people are putting stuff there. Okay. So team chartering is it's not an easy thing, but it's, I think, an important thing if you want to work as an actual strong team. We start out by, you'll notice this is a charter from the current team that I'm on. So it's different than the one from Primera, but you'll notice that we fill out different things. Down the left side, we talk about vision and mission and objectives, and we kind of refine all those till we come up with a single statement for all of them. In the center, we talk about the community and agreements, and the community in this case is everyone who has any connection to our project or product being created and finished. So maybe it's the name of someone who's in the security office that maybe that's the person we go to when we have issues with security stuff, or it's the name of the person, the contact at the third party vendor with the library. And so anytime we have a question about that library we're going to go right to that person. It's the name. In this case, we put all of the developer and management and, UI people and all these different, their name, their email address, and you can't really see it, but also where they live, because we're a distributed team across the United States right now. The community resources is the same sort of thing. Here are all the resources that we have and are going to use. We just want to put that information out there and make sure everybody knows about it beforehand, and that we continue to understand it. And is the company going to provide computers, or in this case, devices? We're working with handheld devices to write an app. Are they going to provide those devices so that we can use them to test locally, or are we going to have the ability to control our own Azure pipeline or something like that? You keep track of all that. You'll notice there's also content diagrams to the right. That's just a general overview of the information we know about what we'll be writing. In the center, we have community agreements, and I'll talk about those more in a minute, because I feel those are probably one of the most important parts of this chartering. And then down the bottom, we list all the risks that it could be possibly associated with this. And that means, I think someone put like earthquake, and another person put at the whim of the C-suite management, like what could be a risk to this project not getting done? Sickness, libraries coming out with a new version that doesn't work with the version of software that we're using, anything that could be a risk. And then to the right, we added most wanted stuff. One is the core team most wanted stuff that we can control, versus the community most wanted stuff that we can't control, but is really important. So all this is really important. But when we look at like the community agreements, this is where we decide as a team what we want to, how we want to work, and what we value. The left side is about how we work. You'll see like there's TDD, there's ensemble work, sustainable pace, cameras on, choose boring technology was an excellent one. Why? I know there's the new version of .NET came out and it's awesome, and there's these new features. Let's not use it, because maybe it's something that not everybody knows. We know this feature, or this language feature works really well. Let's stick with that. It's what we've been using for a long time, and we're not going to introduce new stuff just because it's new. We're going to choose the boring technology, right? Things like that, how we work. The designed alliances, or the right side, is how we work with each other. And we come up with things like rumble respectfully. We're not afraid to ask questions. Last responsible moment, which I love, right? It's not last possible moment. It's putting decisions off to the last responsible moment. Do we have to make this decision right now? No, we can choose to figure it out later when we get to it, right? Team code ownership and team code responsibility. Assume positive intent. All these things are how we work together as a group of people. Now, the really important part about this is not an hour meeting. This is not like, come in and join the meeting and write down some stuff and then we'll go away, or this isn't the management choosing that these are the answers. These are the team members agreeing. And this is like, actually this whole thing, I'm going to go back one. This whole thing took us about 3 full days. And there was about 20 people in the meeting all 3 days. And there was a lot of arguing, especially when it came to community agreements, a lot of arguing, discussion, like cameras on. I don't want my camera on. Like, well, what does that really mean? Well, you have your camera on when you're in the meeting, unless you're eating, or, your kid runs through naked or whatever, that's fine. It's not a law, but we want to have cameras on so that we can see each other, so we can have that face-to-face contact, so we can know you're listening, whatever. All these sort of things, like you have these discussions and you come up with these agreements. And at the end, we've all agreed to work this way.
So Paige,
Yes.
I had a Scrum Master before. You said that you
Yes.
took 3 days to build this. I had a Scrum Master who said, we've gone through all this already. Can I just bring over the stuff we had for my last team?
And was everybody that was on this team on that last team, and they all agreed to it?
No, but it's much more efficient.
No, then you got to go through it again. Then you're not a team. Somebody's left out because they didn't get heard. Right? That's why it's so hard. And honestly, when someone new joins the team, you have to do this again. Maybe not the full 3-day thing, right? But you have to go over and go through these, especially these community agreements, these ways of working. You have to go through them again, and you have to give that person the ability to understand and agree to them. And sometimes that means like, you know what, we've been doing this way for months now, and now you're just joining and saying you don't want to. Like, let's have that conversation of why. We're not going to impose that because we're the team. We're going to talk about why that's a problem. And honestly, if it's a really big problem and you don't want to do it, and it's going to affect the way you work, well, maybe we can find something else to do, right? It's really about understanding how we work. So you can, it's what you can do, that Scrum Master could have done is said, here is some things the team agreed to before that we can use as a, to sort of seed. If you like any of them, let's talk about adding them. But you can't pull that in from another team and go, here's what works for them. You're going to do it. Right. So yeah, Garrett.
I think that this that the Scrum Master was thinking that the purpose of doing that is to have the artifact, right? To make sure that we have the document, that was the important reason for doing this. And the document is not.
Documents are important. Life doesn't go
Garrett,
on.
I've unlocked you, so I think you should be able to unmute now.
Okay, great. So Paige, question on it does sound like this would be really beneficial for like a greenfield development team, but how would you implement this sort of manifesto with, like, let's say you're new to the team, so you got to be the evangelist for this kind of scenario. How would you go about? Because I've been on teams before where they don't do anything agile, or they don't talk really at all. There's no like.
So they're not really a team. They're a bunch of people working on the same feature set. There's
usually like a manager that kind of tells you what to do, and it's like the worst place to work.
We call that a bag of bones, right?
Yeah.
It's just a bag of people that are working on the same feature set, but aren't really a team, right? Even if you talk to each other every day, like, I talk to my friend every day. We're not a team. We're not collaborating. We're not, we haven't, how do I say? I think this is a hard step to take, but I think that this is a hard step to take. It's an important one and should be done. But if there's like this step of, if you're joining the team, especially, maybe there's a time to say, do you guys have agreements? And if they're not written down, can I talk to a few of you, and can I write them down and just so I kind of know? Because oftentimes there are sort of unwritten agreements, right? And I've gotten called on this just not too long ago, where someone joined the team, and I was like, we all agreed to do this, and he's like, I wasn't here, I didn't agree to it. Like, oh yeah, you're right. You're right. But so let's write them down, right? Just let me write them down. And then maybe I'll send, if nothing else, like an email or during stand-up or something, like, here's what I talked to a bunch of people. Could we consider these team agreements? And are there any I missed? And, I think it's important because it provides, I don't want to say rules. Rules is a terrible, rules is a terrible way, but guardrails, or at least and even better, it provides understanding for the team on what you're there to do and how you're, how you're going to do it. Right. Even rules around like PRs and that sort of thing. What's going to get a PR rejected? Why is that going to get a PR? Whose job is it to, to choose? What if I don't think, all these sort of things? I think it's discussions to have, or else if you don't have those discussions, you don't work as a team. I don't know how to, it seems flippant when I say it that way, but it's really hard to see it any other way. Right?
Yeah.
You're just a bunch of people working on the same basic feature set.
I've heard it expressed as the people crossing the street at a crosswalk all have a shared goal, but they're not a team.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree that if you don't have those hard conversations and come to that understanding and do it in a way that is safe and not comfortable, but not, it's not one person saying, this is how we're going to do it and you're going to like it or not type of thing. You don't get the most that you could get out of a team. So I could talk about this for hours, but does that answer your question there, Garrett?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So we can come back to that. We can talk about more along the way if you want. But here are some of the agreements that we sort of, they're generalized, but that we came up with when we did it when we talked about this at Primera. And I don't have a picture of that board. This was back when we were all in person. And so a lot of this stuff was on the walls and giant Post-it notes and stuff. We agreed that we would focus on self-organization and natural leadership. And that means instead of saying, Garrett, you're in charge of this, and anytime this comes up, your job is to deal with it, right? It was more like, we'll understand that this happens, and whoever is in a position to deal with that at the time and wants to will deal with it, right? You really let that natural leadership emerge. It's very, it requires the management especially to give up a control, right? But when they do, it's pretty amazing. And you find out, like, oh, this person really likes to do that, or here's an example. I knew someone on another team in another building when I was at Primera. I think we had a ping pong tournament and he and I played against each other and, had lunch or something afterwards. And he was working on this one application. And at one point we were working on some stuff, or another one of the mobs was working on some stuff. And they're like, man, we need to interface with this other team. And we just can't figure out how to do it. And nobody's returning. We don't know, nobody's returning our emails and whatever. And I was like, oh, I know, Bob, let me figure this out. Let me connect people. Right. And so I just sort of said, I know somebody, I can do it. And sort of took on that responsibility of at least finding someone. Bob wasn't the person that could fix it, but he was able to help me find the person. Right. This is that natural leadership. Who's going to do this? Right? Who wants to do this? And someone will often say, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Or, conflict resolution. We came up with ways of resolving conflicts. And I don't mean like, fist fights. I don't think we had many of them. But it could be as simple as, why would one person wants to use a for loop and one person wants to use a do well, and like, who chooses what the right way is? That's a terrible choice, but, or it could be like, we had somebody join the team and, or we had this person and we agreed that we were all going to do everything that went into production was going to be paired and written TDD. And then say Dustin over the weekend rewrites this one library and checks it in and commits it. And it's written TDD and it's good quality and stuff. But honestly, we agreed that we would do it this way, and you didn't. And how do we resolve that? Right? Because that's not the agreement, right? So we came up with all these ideas around conflict resolution, experiments and outcomes. We talked about we want to be doing experiments. We want to have positive outcomes. We want to continue to grow our processes and our practices. We want to have good code quality and good collaboration, and we want to have good team growth and learning. So all of these things, and again, it's very generalized, but all of these things were things, ideals that we had agreed were important to us. So I'm going to get into a little bit of the story of, anybody have questions on those before I jump on? I'm going to move on to the story of FAST and how that sort of came about and what that really was. But if not, we can.
I have a quick question. How did you get leadership to let you do this? I guess is my question, because I've been at places where they embrace Scrum, and I've been at places where they're very against it.
Yeah, we had a really good leader. He was like, tell me what you're going to do, tell me why you're going to do it, and tell me if you need me to do anything for you. Right. And we got lucky in that sense, really. Now, at new places, right, at this point in my career, I can go in and say, I have some ideas of what's going to help and how I can help your teams, work at a more rapid, sustainable pace, write better code, less bugs, have learn more. I can go in and I can say this, and I can show with examples and some data and that sort of thing. At the time when we didn't know what we were doing, it was just a really good manager who knew how to lead and not manage. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so yeah, there was some serendipity in this. That it was like, as there is with a lot of things that are amazing, that just happened to be the right time and the right place. That being said, I'll get into some of the negatives later. But let's talk about actual fast agile. So this is my friend Ron Cortell. In 2014, he was at an open space conference and had this epiphany. Right? Are you guys familiar with open space, with the open space technology or open space conferences? Sometimes they're called unconferences. I'll tell you a little bit about them, but basically it's a self-organized conference. And there was about 800 people at this conference. They sat down. Yes. Yeah. In about 20 minutes, they organized this conference for the day. Right. So it comes from this guy. His name is Harrison Owen. The story behind open space is that he went to all these tracked conferences, and he would go to some talks, and then he'd be like, oh, I know all this stuff. I don't want to hear that person. So he'd sit in the hallway, and he had these amazing conversations with other people who didn't want to be in a talk that they already had seen or whatever. And so he had these rules. Whoever comes are the right people. Whenever it starts is the right time. Whenever it's over. And whatever happens is the only thing that could happen based on the people that showed up. Right. And then there was one law that to open space, and that's the law of personal mobility. And that basically says, if you're in a talk or that you are not learning or actively contributing to the learning of others, you have the right and almost the responsibility to leave and go to another talk where you can continue to learn or, provide for the learning of others.
I think I've
right?
heard that also called as the law of 2 feet.
Yeah, I think they've done the whole move to personal mobility thing.
Is that it?
But,
Okay.
But yeah,
because the whole metric thing.
Yes.
Probably.
Yeah. It's easier to measure. I don't know. No, so here's an open space conference, right? All those people are sitting around in a giant circle. You see those giant Post-it notes after they do the opening, welcome and announcements. They ask everybody to come up, write a subject on those Post-it notes that they want to talk about or hear about. And then they have a giant wall that has a bunch of rooms across the top, or in this case, probably tables with balloons on them or something. And then times. And you take your talk that you want to hear or talk about, and you put it into an open slot. And when all these slots get filled up, you have a conference for the day. And it's really an amazing process. So Ron's idea was, gosh, how can we do this with software development, right? It's 800 people doing this one conference in a day. And actually, so I've been to 3-day open space conferences, and we do it every morning. Like we create the conference schedule for the day in about 20 minutes in the morning. It's pretty fabulous. Where am I going? So he brought this back to Primera, and we talked about it, and through it with, because we were experimenting on stuff, we decided, all right, maybe there's something to it. Let's try it. Let's try an experiment. Let's say for the next X number of weeks, we're going to do some sort of open space. And we ended up having some really good discussions about what it looked like and what it could be, but we're going to try it. We're going to expect this. We're going to talk about the outcome at the end of the experiment time and see if we want to keep doing it. Right? So we came up with, I don't know if this slide goes here, but we wanted to come up with some ideals around this. And this is probably later in the time because it wasn't called FAST at the beginning. In fact, I'll show you where FAST comes from. But it wasn't called FAST. So these are probably later, couple of years after we had been doing it. But rules, again, don't like it. Guidelines, probably better. But, it was do the right thing for the release, be a team player, be a coach and coachable, which was really important, and strive for excellence in your craft. And then our values that we had were, face-to-face communication and co-location beats offices and emails. Code craftsmanship is important. Quality code and technical practices is extremely important. Self-organization, trusting those and collaborating with those around us, sharing vision. And that one was super visible in that we took these giant Post-it notes and pretty much everything we wanted to radiate as much information to anybody that wanted to see it at any time. And then Kaizen, that idea of continuing to improve the code base, improve the practices, improve ourselves and our teammates and our company, right? All of these things were ideas that we continually reiterated as we were doing this. And again, I don't think that slide goes here, but I think it's important. So we talked about how we were going to implement this, right? And the first thing that we decided was, you know what? We had too many damn meetings. We got a meeting to talk about planning. We got a meeting to groom the planning to do this thing and guess the number thing. And then we're going to talk about how it went when we guessed the number wrong. And, all this sort of thing. Screw it. Get rid of all the damn meetings. And that was great. We all loved that. We all tried that. It worked for about a day and a half, right? No meetings. Yeah, about a day and a half. And then somebody was like, nah, I need to talk to you guys about stuff. So we, again, decided, let's experiment. What's the minimum number of meetings that we could have in an iteration and still make it effective and not ineffective? That's not the word I'm looking for, but not get in the way of getting stuff done. right? So we decided on one meeting, and we decided it was going to be a fast meeting. We decided it was going to be 30 minutes maximum. We played with the format, but it was at the beginning of every iteration. We had one meeting, everybody attended. Often we did an activity or an icebreaker. We talked about the process, what our meeting looked like, because sometimes we had new people there. I'll show you a picture or two of that. We would close the previous iteration, which meant, does anybody have anything that they did this last iteration to show or demo? We could do that. We did turn up the good. I talked about that from Woody Zool. We had a whole board where at any time you could go put stuff on there. Like, I really enjoyed this. I think we should do more of it. We'd read through this, turn up the good. What was good that we want to do more of? What did we like that in this iteration that we want to do more of? None of that, what could have gone better, what didn't work, whatever. If it was good, let's just do more of it and see what happens. Right? And then we would plan the next iteration. And that was fairly simple. We'd have our POs, and I'll show you this marketplace in a minute. We would have our POs show up and set the direction by telling us what they were thinking for the next iteration. We would have what we called story stewards or facilitators, like in an open space meeting, step up and choose some work they wanted to facilitate or steward through the process for that iteration. And then we do our marketplace, just like I was showing that wall. People would go up and choose what they were going to work on and what team they were going to work with for that iteration. And then we'd go forth and do all the things, right? And the meeting that you're looking at here obviously wasn't our first iteration, but it worked, and it eventually became. You'll notice we've scratched out announcements in the middle, and we moved it to the top because there were people there during the beginning that didn't stay for the whole thing. So like, okay, well, if it's announcements and it's really important, let's do it first. Here's a picture of us doing our meeting. There's a really handsome facilitator. It wasn't always me. I just happened to be, we rotated that, just like most of our positions or workaround process, we rotated who was going to do the facilitating of the board. These are all the people that were part of our team. By the time I left Primera, we had 50 people on the team. And we had about 5 or 6 different mob or ensemble groups. Right? Here's our product manager. Notice where he's standing. He is not at the center of the world. He's actually not even really part of the meeting. He's already done his job by sort of setting the direction for the next iteration. And then he steps away and he just exists there to answer questions if we have them. And then finally, often we had guests. We were doing some crazy stuff in terms of, that doesn't look like Scrum. So we would have people come and try and figure out, like, how are they doing such amazing stuff when it's not Scrum? It doesn't, what can we do? And so we had people from other teams in the company. We had other people from companies outside of Primera coming in to watch and see. It was pretty amazing stuff. Right? One of the things we did a lot, I talked about was dynamic reteaming. Right? Part of our goals of knowledge growth, natural leadership, team ownership, and team responsibility, you could go work on whatever it was that you wanted. And that might seem like chaos, but oftentimes people would stay with the same group because they had this ownership of their work, and they felt this responsibility for getting that work done. And even they would stay iteration to iteration until that chunk of work was done, right? Or they would get to a point where they'd be like, that team over there, they're going to work on I don't know what they're gonna work on, something security, or they're going to work on getting data from the database. And I've done that work before. And so for this next iteration, I'm going to go work for them with them, because I know kind of I can help them. I know, I can use my knowledge to make them work faster and work better. I can impart that because I've already done it in other cases. Or, if you had finished work on what you were working on, and there wasn't anywhere else that you felt you could help, you could always go and work on a team of stuff that like you'd never done before. Now, I've never done UI, but it's interesting and I'd love to at least understand it. I'm going to go work with that group who's doing the UI stuff so that I have a basic knowledge of what they're doing and UI work in the future. Right. So this was a really great way of spreading that knowledge by allowing people to work on in different groups, each iteration. Here's our board. We limited work in progress, and you'll notice this is not. This might not be the full board. This is probably a smaller team's board, but we decided that if we're all working on something all the time, if we have everybody's maxed out, we're not getting as much done as if we limit the work in progress and all focus on getting the most important thing done now and then moving on to the next most important thing. What's the saying that Tim Ottinger uses? When you go to choose your work, you say, what is the most important thing that the application currently doesn't do? And then you work on that for the iteration. And after that iteration, whether you're done or not, it might still be that same thing, or it might have totally changed. That's up to your PM and business and whatever. But what's the most important thing? Why should we work on anything but the most important stuff that the app doesn't do right now? Right. So it better defined our priorities. It allowed us to slow down to go fast. You'll notice this board has, like I said, 5 slots. We have a section that shows people on vacation. We have a section for block stories. Usually what we would do is we all had name tags, magnetic name tags. And you'll notice across the top of each of these people are the stewards of this story. Their job is not to own it. Their job is not to be the smartest, but their job is to steward it through the process. They're not there to unblock it if it gets blocked. They're there to find someone that can help unblock it. Right? So their job, they're stewarding it. They're the ones who are saying, this is interesting to me. I will be a steward for this work. And then everybody else has put their name on where they want to go. And once this board gets filled up and we choose our work, we go off and do all the things. I think I have, we chose to do what we're calling whole team programming now, right? Mobbing, ensemble work. Here there's 2 mob stations here. You might notice somebody, Dustin, there's Steve Quo, and oh no, I don't see Garrick there, but the really nice thing about this, not only did we all get to impart our knowledge and be part of working on a chunk of work together, but you'll notice how close we were. There were times when we were working on something and we'd turn to another group and say, hey, I know you guys have been doing this. We're going to kind of like, we have to touch this. We have to do something with it. We want this sort of data or this structure. And we'd sort of like merge the chairs together and all talk about it and write some code. And then we'd unmerge and go back to our groups. And so there was nothing slowing us down by waiting for another team to finish the, whatever, we were able to sort of like continue to work, and there wasn't integration issues with having to, send an email or wait for a meeting to talk about what it's supposed to look like. We just did it because everybody was right there. This is our way of making our work visible. We we ended up calling these discovery trees. But actually, I want to back up a little. We wanted to make the work visible to everybody that wanted to see it. Right. So instead of putting everything in Jira and tasking it out and, keeping it there, we decided to use stickies and put it on the windows and put it on the whiteboards. And, anybody that walked by could look at this and say, oh, obviously the things that are crossed off are done. It's kind of hard to see in this picture, but we used like on this one, we used tick boxes in the corner to say it was in progress and slashes once it was finished. And we use these not to design and architect the entire functionality that we were going to write, but to discover the work as we did the work. So we would start with this top one up here, for instance, in the top left corner of the window. You'll notice it has a ticket number on it also. That actually did go back into whatever the Microsoft Jira thing is called or was called back then. But it was the ticket management sort of thing, story management. But we would make this first row of tickets, of Post-its, and we would say, look, to do this, we need to do these things. We know that. Out of the things we just wrote down, is there enough to do? Can we start on something right now? And can we start on something that's only going to take us maybe half a day, a couple hours, whatever, right? If the answer was no, we'd say, okay, well, let's go to the first one and let's start writing some things that we need to do for that below it. And we get a couple things on there and we'd say, can we start working on any of this right now? Is there anything here that we've written that we can do, in a couple hours or half a day? If the answer is yes, stop working on the discovery tree. Go work on the code, right? A bias towards action. Let's write code instead of designing, because honestly, by the time we get down here to the end, if we're designing this all up front, our code is not, it's changed, whether it be because the business has asked for something different or something didn't work the way we expected. And now we have to do it this way instead. So we didn't want to waste all that time doing the design up front. We discovered the work as we did the work, right? Which is that's where our discovery trees came from. Again, whole nother talk. There's some really good talks on this, and I'll have some slides or some links at the end that you can check out also. I really like this.
I'd like to add one quick thing with that too, is
Yes.
the beauty of those discovery trees is when people have those different ideas, you just throw it out there real quick. Like, yeah, we got it, right? We got something there. We got the placeholder. We'll make sure we take care of that concern. Let's get back to just focusing on the thing that we have to do now.
Yeah. Here's a discovery tree from the team that I'm currently working on. Right? Without knowing anything about this story or this chunk of work or whatever, can you tell me what % of the known work is finished? Is it 50% done? Is it 60% done? I'd say it's probably about 60, 65, right? So this is one of those information radiators. Like, if you look at this, we started with writing this order screen. We have a menu item screen and a tab display screen. The menu item screen is done. So that's 50%. The tabs display screen is orange. So that's in progress. We have 5 things under it, one of which is punted, which means we're just going to wait and it's not really work. Again, we talked about last responsible moment. It's not really something that's important to getting this done right now. Something we have to do, but not something that we need to do right now. So that goes back on the stack basically as something to do later, because it's not the most important thing that the app doesn't do. This one's finished. So we have 3 that haven't been started yet. So what, 50% plus 40% of 50, 60 something. if you understand this, right, you can walk by and you can look at this and go, oh, look at that. They're easily halfway done of the known work. Maybe there's stuff that comes up. There's always stuff that comes up, right, that you don't know about and you don't see. But you know what? That becomes another branch under here. Or sometimes it becomes another discovery tree altogether, right? So again, another long discussion. It's a great tool. It worked really well for us. As a person with ADHD, I love these because I don't have to remember what I did and didn't do. I just, oh, I got to remember to do this. This is important for this step. Let's put a sticky up there and we'll get to it when we get to it. We had team weekly katas. Anybody do katas? Like yeah, thank you, Dustin. Anybody? So a kata is a focused practice, a deliberate practice, writing code in a deliberate way to get better, right? And I've got a whole talk on that, but I often ask, who here can type 300 words a minute? Anybody? Who here has been working in the industry for more than 10 years? Right? Why can't you type 300 words a minute? You've been doing it for 10 years. How come? You should just be getting faster and faster, right? And the answer is wrong, because doing will get you better. But if I said, I'll give you $2 million if you can type 300 words a minute in 2 weeks. You're not just going to keep typing and doing work. You're going to go get a tutor and those typing programs. You're going to really learn all the tricks. You're going to focus on typing and you will get better. You'll get a lot better. I don't know if you get 300 words per minute, but you will get amazingly fast because you are deliberately practicing. Well, why don't we do that with writing code? Why don't we do that with writing better code? Right? Do we just get better by, oh, I know how to do that. I've done that before. Well, maybe you do. Maybe you get a little bit better because you learn different ways. But if you really want to get better, you practice. Just like athletes, just like musicians, you practice. So we had a weekly kata practice at a weekly time where we would write a kata, and oh my God, it was almost always fizz buzz, and that sucked. But we'd write fizz buzz, we'd write it TDD, we'd see how short we could make it. We'd see if we could do it with no if statements. We'd see if we could do it in, let's pick another language. Let's do it in F#. I've never written in F#. Let's write fizz buzz and see what we can do. Let's focus on naming. Let's write fizz buzz as a kata, but the focus is good naming. Right. And that's when you start to get people that like, well, okay, input number. And you're like, why is it called input? Well, what should I call it? I don't know. What do you call it? Well, let's call it number. No, I know it's a number because you typecast it as an int. Like, it's not, what is it used for? Like, what's the name? So these are the things you can get out of a good practice, a good focused practice. Yes, sir.
Paige, I got to share something that I had learned when I was working with some iOS developers using, I would say IDE again, for iOS.
Oh, code, Xcode,
yeah, no, yeah,
or the JetBrains one.
Well, no, we did the JetBrains one too, but yeah, with Xcode, if you select your code and right click in one of the context menus, it will do a text to voice converter. Awesome. So you can select your code and dump it as an MP3 file. Yes. And then you can actually listen to Siri read your code out loud. So you can hear Siri say, if score is winning, then calculate winning score. Else, if score is losing, then calculate losing score. Else, if int greater than string, like, well, that doesn't sound right. Yeah, it was a fun thing that we would do, and it would just make you look at the code different, and it was we wouldn't have done that hadn't we actually been doing a kata and playing.
And I'll tell you, well-written, well-named code will never need a comment, right? If you're doing it well, you should never have comments. And I've got lots of those sort of things that make people bristle, so I won't go on with those. But we also, going back to this, we also had learning time. Woody Zool, anybody heard of Woody Zool? You guys know who that is? Fabulous guy, amazing guy. He talked about at Hunter Industries, every morning, the first thing they did when they came in was an hour of learning time as a group. There's so much you get out of learning as a team. We kind of, again, turn up the good. We decided, well, what if we did that every Wednesday morning for 3 hours? We started from 9 to noon every Wednesday morning. We did an open space where it was just like, let's learn something. Anything you want. There were no boundaries around it. Now, mind you, like, let's learn to water ski was probably not something that the team would do, but somebody could put it up there. But what did we learn? We learned to do an Alexa app. We learned about microservices. We learned about eventing systems, all that sort of thing. We learned about memory management and whatever. And the best thing is we could then take that learning and apply it if we wanted or could into our weekly work, right? And some of those things, for instance, the Alexa app, if you are a Primera member, you can now say, hey, Alexa, what's my last deductible? And Alexa will say, just a minute, and you will get a text from Alexa and you with the password, and you say the password is 1524, and Alexa will say your last deductible was $12.38, and you have $4,200 remaining to pay. All of that came out of learning. It wasn't a business side idea. That was something that we thought, oh, let's try and figure that out. And then we were like, how can we make this work at our company? So learning is fabulous. Where am I going? Oh yeah. So here are some of the outcomes that we got. And I kind of talked about that, but we wrote a really high quality, scalable survey engine that was customizable and extensible. Meaning that at Primera, if you go to the doctor or it started out, if you call support, you hang up, it would immediately go through the system. We would pick it up off of an eventing hub that there was this call to customer support. We knew who the user was because that was part of the message on the eventing system. And then we would send out a survey saying, hey, how'd it go? And, I think there was like 5 or 6 questions, but if you ever answered lower than 3 in 2 questions in a row, immediately we would pop up this box that said, do you want to talk to the vice president of customer service? And you could choose yes. And it would immediately put something on that person's calendar and say, they'll call you back on this day at this time. And literally the vice president would call them back. So, and then other teams were like, well, that's cool. We want to use it, and we started getting doctors that were Primera providers that wanted to use it. And it was extensible enough because we'd written it in a really high quality way that it was very easy to add different things, different areas to it. I talked about, we ended up with a microservices architecture. We were the first of 11 teams to move data from our internal giant behemoth of a SQL thing up to the Azure cloud. And they were amazed because nobody had done it before, but it wasn't hard because we took all this time to learn how to do it. And then, we're able to experiment with it. And it actually was hard, but it was those sort of things where they're like, but we didn't ask you to do that. And we're like, yeah, but we did it because it was the cool thing and the right thing. And it was the next move. We talked about that Syriop that went into production. We had huge growth of all our team and our individuals. Anybody that joined the team had about a day and a half of ramp up time. And literally any person that joined the team was committing to Maine that same day within a couple hours, right? Because we didn't have to wait for them to set up their computer or anything like that. They were part of a mob, and they were typing, putting code in, right? We actually, I talk about this now. We had people coming from all over the U.S. We have, I go talk about it all over. Ron Cortell talks about it all over the US and internationally. And it's pretty amazing to kind of look back and go, like, we were just doing what we thought was the best thing to do as developers, as a team, right? We just did what was the easiest thing, the most important thing, to make sure that we wrote the good software. Right. So, couple more here. Somebody, was that you, Dustin, that had put the mastery, purpose, and autonomy, right? Really positive aspects. We loved our work. When was the last time you had a job where you woke up in the morning and went, yeah, it's Monday, I'm gonna go to the office, right? Especially because I talked about that Wednesday learning time. We had a manager that said, Wednesdays we're kind of working on Monday, Tuesday, and then we'd make this drop where you guys are learning on, you can, and then you want to ramp up on Thursday. Why don't you guys move that learning time to Friday so it doesn't interfere? And we got together as a team and said, we think this is really important. We really like it. We're going to move it to Monday morning. And so we moved it to Monday morning. So 9 to noon every Monday, we started learning. That was our learning time. And you know what? Like I said, we were able to take that learning and apply it throughout the rest of the week. And there was other side effects, that sort of law of unintended consequences. We had 3 PMs at the end, and they were rushing to make that 8 a.m. meeting, the fast meeting. And so now they had all day. They had until after lunch before they had to figure out what the work they wanted to put on the board for the week was. So it gave them some time also. We had a great emergence of natural leadership. We had that newer people who I think of a couple of the interns that joined us, or younger, just out of school people, and the rise in their ability to do what they wanted and to feel comfortable going, this is what I think should happen, and talking, and that whole I don't know how to put it. There was a great emergence of natural leadership. We all had a responsibility to each other and to the company. Right. We had, I talk about team ownership and team responsibility. Bugs, nobody wrote bugs. It wasn't anybody's fault if a bug got into production. It was everybody's fault, because it was all of our code. This was not your code and my code. It was all of our code. And one of the things that usually came up when I talked about choosing our own work, right? We would choose our work and put it into those slots, those work in progress slots. Someone, usually like a scrum master, always comes up to me at a conference and says, what about the shit work? What about that story that really nobody wants to do? How do you assign that to someone so it gets done? And the answer is you don't. You put it on the board, and maybe it doesn't happen that iteration, but eventually in the next iteration, or maybe the one after that, but usually someone goes, this sucks. I don't want to do this. This is going to be dumb. But you know what? I'm going to do it. And if somebody could help me, we'll knock it out, and then we'll get back to the fun shit. Right? Really, there's a team responsibility for that work. And so the hard and the crappy stuff gets done, even because, I mean, it's like, I don't know if everybody's a parent or you have a pet, like, God, it's 4 a.m. I don't want to go outside with the dog, but I have to, because I'm responsible for him. Right. And yeah, we used to joke that to be part of this, you had to be an adult. And it's sort of a joke and sort of not a joke, because it was not easy. You had to be an adult. You had to be responsible. You had to accept that other people wanted to be responsible as well. And that people would fail sometimes, and that's okay, right? So finally, we really positive team growth, learning better software more rapidly. I talk about autonomy, purpose, and mastery. Without those 3 things, you don't get amazing performance and value creation. Those are the 3 things that we need to have in jobs. And often we have purpose and autonomy, but we don't really have mastery in a lot of places nowadays. And that's that ability to grow and continue, right? Negative aspects, again, it's not for everyone. Collaboration is hard. It really is. And it's a practice that you have to learn. Like, as a senior developer, going in, learning to collaborate sucked, because you know what? Let me just write it. I'm just gonna, it'll be so much faster if I do it and I don't have to explain why to you. But that's not, that you lose all the benefit then, right? And so you have to, I used to say, you have to give up your id. You have to give up this, like, me, I'm the super senior developer, I know so much, and be able to say, I know a lot. There are some things I don't know, but that's okay. And you know what? I'm gonna impart as much as I know to the team, and be okay if I don't know everything, and if maybe once in a while it looks like I don't know everything. Totally hard, especially in our industry, right? I talked about it requires a maturity level people aren't comfortable with at the office. That means hard conversations sometimes, and being able to take feedback without feeling that you're being attacked, which is a really hard one when someone comes up and goes, why would you write this? Right? Why wouldn't you just go do it this way? And, maybe that's probably not the way that the conversation would go, but oftentimes, like, just being asked about why you wrote code a certain way puts us on edge, like they're attacking me. But maybe they're just asking because they want to know and they don't know, right? But you got to get to that mindset. You got to be in a psychologically safe environment, and that takes a lot of practice. Also, that ability to stand up and go, nope, this is wrong. This is wrong. Look, I know you are the senior principal guy, but that is not the right way. And I want to talk about why, right? And you have to have that to really, if you don't have that, you don't have growth and you don't have ingenuity. Right? And then finally, and this is kind of the reason that I'm not at Primera anymore, there's a corporate immune system. Right? Just like our immune system, it wants to get back to homeostasis. The CTO, yes, the CTO left and a new one came in. And then there was this thing of like, you guys are doing something a little different. That's weird. I think, you know what? You only have one manager and there's 50 of you. Here's 5 managers. Here's 5 managers, because in the rest of the company, we have one manager for every 10 people, and 50 people. There you go. Congratulations. And unfortunately, our director had after all those years, and especially with this new person, lost a lot of his political power and had expended it keeping us safe, right? And so we had 5 managers come in, and one of them said, maybe you guys should be doing 2-week sprints. Oh, I didn't even mention that, did you? When I was talking about iterations, I'm step back. We're talking about iterations and how we were rotating and dynamically reteaming each iteration. Oh, I can't believe I didn't mention this. We thought, what's the smallest time frame that we can do an iteration in and still and be effective? And again, like meetings, we couldn't really try 0. We tried 1, that was dumb. So we settled on 2 days. So our iteration was every 2 days. And so it was Monday and Thursday, right? With Wednesday as the learning, and eventually it became Tuesday and Thursday. We would do that fast meeting and we would dynamically reteam. We had managers come in and say, everybody else is doing 2-week sprints. You guys should do that too. And so we talked about it as a team and said, no, we don't, we like what we're doing. And that didn't go over so well. So yeah, just a second. I say 2-day iterations and hands go up. So give me a minute, Garrett. Let me finish this and I'll get to that. There has to be a trust outside of the team. We call it a collective. There had to be trust that that we were all in it to do the right thing, and that even though it was weird and different, it was working, and that was okay. Management has to give up a lot of their power over, right? You can't have people telling you what to do and still self-organize. You can't have, you need a manager or a leader that can say, like ours did, what can I do? How can I help? Tell me what you're doing and tell me why you're doing it, and I'll back you up, or I'll tell you not to do it. But that's unfortunately few and far between. We'd love to get more, but the middle management thing, middle managers, I'm going to generally state this, middle managers are the worst. And that's because they don't have all the power they need to do the stuff that they could do, but they're responsible for everything that they can't control also. Right. And so honestly, I know there's some really good people out there in middle management positions who want to do great stuff, but often they get stuck between why isn't your team producing more and why don't you let us do what we want to do? And so it becomes this this sort of dichotomy of like, they end up having to tell you what to do to feel at least that they have some control. So that was one of the negative things. And then other teams often feel threatened if you're doing something different. This is something we found out when another manager came over to our team and said, could you guys stop laughing so much? You're disturbing us. And I found out after talking to some people on her team that, it wasn't that we were disturbing them. It's that they were frustrated because we were having an enjoyable time doing our work, and they were required to go to their cubicle and work hard. Right. And that sort of like, how come that other team gets to do stuff? We had a cowbell that we would ring to get everybody to come to the meetings in the morning, right, to the one fast meeting. And then, of course, eventually everybody started mooing as we all sort of sauntered that way. And then the cowbell disappeared one day. It was kind of, yeah. And then we got another one and that one disappeared too. So, it can be threatening to other teams if they're not part of it. So you were going to ask a question, Garrett, about 2-day iterations. Yes. Got on mute. Okay.
All right,
So,
there we go. Sorry,
awesome.
he had to
Yeah.
give me the privileges. Yeah, so I was just curious, did you guys also release every 2 days? Were you like DevOps at that point, or
We released every time we committed.
Okay, so you were super DevOps.
Yeah, we didn't work on branches. Well, I take that back. We never slept on a branch, which meant the branch never lasted more than a couple hours, if at all. Right? Because we were doing TDD and you know, we were able to commit, poll, if all the tests pass, then we push to main. Right.
So there was-
Sometimes if we were making giant changes, we would make a branch and work on it for a while and then merge that branch. But it would never last more than overnight. It would never last overnight.
Gotcha. So there wasn't like a develop environment, UAT environment. It was, you cut from main, which was production.
Yes. Yeah. And so when you say, yeah. So we had a couple environments, and honestly, we couldn't push to production because of the nature of our work in insurance and, that sort of thing. But we could push all the way right to the edge.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
every time we committed, boom, it was gone. And then somebody else pushed the button that, went to production. We didn't care. At that point, that's the thing. So when I say yes, it went to production, like we had done everything that we could. And if there wasn't that gate there for legal and security reasons, it would have gone right out to the public.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. One of the other things about the 2-day iterations when I talk about it, unlike, say, a sprint, there was no requirement to get things done. There wasn't a finish the story or chunk of work. The requirements that we had around our iterations is that you showed value added every 2 days. And that often meant that, excuse me, we would come back after 2 days and go, God, we worked on this for the last 2 days. And we found that it's totally not what we thought. In fact, we're going to have to get these ports opened and we're going to have to rebuild this thing so that it uses that library. And it's going to take us a long time. And so, we started doing that, and then we just reverted all our code. But what did we get? What value did we add after 2 days of doing that? We added knowledge, right? We added understanding, and well, the value wasn't necessarily that we wrote code, but the value was that we better understood what we needed to do to get things to work properly or to be done well. And so, that was acceptable, right? What it really did that was really great was, say, instead of doing a 2 weeks, you ever done that thing where you're doing a 2-week sprint, and come like Tuesday, Wednesday of the second week, you're like, shit, this is, how am I going to get this done? And then, like you cram a bunch of stuff in there to make it work because you have 3 days left. Or you get to that point and you're like, I've been working for the last week and a half, and there is no way that this is going to work now with that new library, with that new system that other team wrote. Right. And you go back and you're like, I just worked a week and a half and I really don't have anything to show for it. And it's really unfortunate because it feels like that time was wasted. When you work in a very short iteration, a 2-day iteration, 3 days, whatever, you get that. Somebody had said fast feedback. You get that feedback right away. And you're able to say, you know what? It's not going to work. We worked 2 days on it and found out that there's no way that it's going to work. So what did we lose? We didn't lose a week and a half. We lost 2 days of work. I'd rather just lose 2 days of work and learn something than push myself through, either lose a whole sprint of not getting something done, or like I said, on that Wednesday or Thursday, start to write code like mad so that it does get done. Right. And unfortunately, we're supposed to be able to roll that work because we found out that stuff had changed or had, that there was more to it. but unfortunately, we often work in a place where rolling tickets is like a bad thing, right?
Well,
As
and
opposed to-
sometimes in order for somebody to break down the work and figure out what date it's going to be done, they break it down, they sequence the 5 stories each sprint for 6 months straight, and they say this is when we're going to prod, this is when we're going to be done. So if you learn something in sprint 2, sprint 3 might already be predefined.
yeah,
I mean,
Yeah.
there's just all these bad practices that just don't account for learning, which is reality.
right. And the whole idea is of that agile aspect is that we can turn as soon on a dime as soon as we learn that what we think is supposed to happen or what we think we're supposed to do is not what we have to do, and that's okay, right? And so, one of the really nice things about having smaller iterations is that it made that quicker, right? And then honestly, we were able to get more done again, right? So we talked about, this is just the high level overview that came out at the very end. I think this is in what we call the FAST guide. So we actually, Ron Cortell, who was the guy that sort of came up with this, has written all this down into a FAST guide. And the idea is basically just bring everybody that's going to work on the code or work on the product, bring them together as one collective. Put everything on the walls or radiate that information to anybody that wants to see it. One of the things that we do in our team right now is we have an open Zoom meeting all the time. And we told the C-suite people, we're not going to do demos. You show up anytime you want, and we will give you a demo of what we're doing and what's going on right now. Right. And make it available to them. We let the team self-organize to break down and do the work, right? There's no breaking down and grooming and figuring out tasks and stuff up front. We do the work when we start it, and we know the work as we do it. And then on a short cadence, sync and repeat the above steps. So here's just some, really good word cloud of stuff that came out of Primera. And so
I don't know if I've heard of story stewardship before.
Story stewardship was the person who in our open space on our FAST board was the person who stewarded the work through the process.
Huh.
They were the ones that took an interest in getting that done, or at least stewarding it through the process.
Thank you.
Yeah. Finally, one last slide, if you wouldn't mind, right? If you could I always ask these when people ask me for advice, like if you could do one thing, when you go into the office tomorrow or Monday, if you could do one thing, if you could make one little change, one tiny change that would make things better. I don't even have a qualifier for what better means, right? But I bet everybody has an idea. If you could do one thing that would make things better tomorrow, what would that be? Doesn't have to be big. Good. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time, and it doesn't have to be regular time for learning. If you even, it doesn't even have to be whole team. Grab somebody in the cube next to you and say, hey, you want to take 15 minutes and just sort of like do a kata? Usually in the beginning, katas are solving a problem. Once you get past the problem solving, you start focusing on other aspects of it, right? Yeah. How can you get them to invest? How can you get your teammates to invest in the team? That's a really tough one. If you don't feel like, if the people on the team don't feel like they're allowed to be invested. Right?
Yeah, when you were talking, I was thinking about the framing that I learned from Esther Derby, skill and will. And I know that you are not saying this is the way that every team should work, because there are people who don't have that will for it. They don't want to do that. They would rather have somebody give them the list of requirements and do the thinking for them. So they had a very small focal area and they might not care about some other things, right? And that's fine.
Yeah, totally acceptable, by the way.
Mhm.
Right. And that was another negative. I'll just go on to this. Here's my info and my great Thor picture. Totally acceptable if you or someone wants to just show up and tell me what to do, give me some work, I'll write some code, and then I'm going to go home and not think about it. And that's totally acceptable. Just not going to work on this type of team.
It's good for coders.
Sometimes. Ben, you have a question? If you can get unmuted.
Hey, yeah, so kind of, talking about that skill and will thing, I love that Dustin kind of gave me that segue into my question. So
Yeah.
how do you, what, think about like from an interview process. So my team does a lot of like what you're saying, we do basically like ensemble programming pretty much all day, every day. We love it. But we're kind of tasked now with maybe bringing like one more developer into the fold. What kind of questions, in your limited time during an interview, like what kind of questions do you ask somebody to really like get that thumbs up, thumbs down, like feeling on that?
Yeah.
And maybe likewise, because I've changed jobs, once or twice. What kind of questions do you maybe ask like a team? And in that critical moment, it's a big decision to sort of switch a job. Like what questions do you maybe ask like a team to maybe get a better feeling on whether they're, where they're at on their journey, I guess, to greatness, or maybe if me loving it, if I'd fit in and they adopt so those same things.
So from an interviewing a potential team member aspect, the one really easy question is, you want to write some code, right? Take them out to your team area, sit down with a mob and write code, because they're going to be expected to do that if they join your company. Right. And honestly, whiteboarding is shit. Don't ever do it, please. Thank you. Sorry. Like if you want to learn how someone writes code, write code with them. Ask them questions about it. Why did you do that? And, maybe they did the right thing. Why did, and then, so I will code with someone. In fact, I'd rather they come and let's work on production work. You signed an NDA, I'm assuming, or something like that, or if you needed to. If not, maybe we can find a small task on the side, not have them do it, but let's work in the mob. Do they communicate well? Are they comfortable receiving feedback? Like, no, go up to line 14 and add that, like people bristle sometimes if they're not comfortable with mobbing or that collaboration, right? Are they able, like one of my big things, do they defend their positions? If I ask them a question and they're like, well, this and this, and I'm like, well, did you think of that? And if they change their mind immediately, like, no, sorry, not for me, not for my team. That's a very generalized, of course, but like that was it strong opinions loosely held. Can you have a discussion with me about why your way is good for this what we're doing right now? And can you change your mind if I have a better opinion or a better explanation, or can you convince me? Right? Can you work with us in the way that we're working? That's really the question. And I don't think there's a list of questions you can ask. because my friend Steve, our friend Steve Quo has a great way of doing this, though. He'll often give them a survey to fill out that, you know, says like, rate yourself 1 to 5 on TDD and pairing. And, you know, inevitably people are like, I'm a 4 with TDD. I'm a 4 with pairing, you know, whatever. And he'll be like, why did you rate yourself a 4? Tell me what makes you better than average? You know, and like, it's, you know, the people that rate themselves a 4 often aren't there. Or those of us, you're like, but maybe they are. But, you know, like, I guess the answer is put them in the work and get the rest of the team around them and see how you feel. It's so much better than sitting in a conference room and talking about, you know, tell me about a time when, like, what a stupid question. Yeah, you know, so I have some very dogmatic views, and hiring brings them out. So does that help? Yeah, okay. Carter, you have your hand up there. Yes, and he needs to unmute.
I don't, that's odd. Let me,
You should just unmute everybody.
I did. That's the problem here.
Okay, all right.
I can ask Carter to unmute.
Okay, can you
There
hear
you
me?
go.
Yeah, now I
Yeah.
can mute him too again. There you go, Carter. How about that?
Nope. Now he's muted again.
Unmute again, Carter.
Okay, we good?
Yes.
As probably the only person in a talent acquisition role, like I didn't like a lot of what you said, I'll admit it. But to Ben's point, one of the things I tell all candidates that come in an interview with us, think out loud, right? Because we do put their hands on the keyboard.
Yeah.
It's not whiteboarding. There's probably some pseudo code on some levels, right? Like, let's be real. There's probably some whiteboarding, but think out loud, right? Like, that's one of the most important things that we see is we want to make sure that we can work with you from a thought process way, not just code next to you, but like, can they collaborate to all your points, right? I liked a lot of what you said. I also, Paige, good for you for saying I hold strong opinions loosely, right? And what a great saying that is.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it's important, right? It really is. And like I always say, you know, I don't know the best way that we should be writing code. I know the best way right now, right? And I'm happy to talk with you about it. But if you have a better way and we can talk about it and discuss it and you can convince me that it's better, damn it, let's do that. Because it doesn't, I don't care. Yeah, thank you, Garrett. I don't care. I want to write good code, and I want to write it in a healthy and responsible way. And you know what? Maybe I don't know the best way. I just know the best way right now. Right? So yeah, I very much agree with that. And yeah. Oh, there was one. I want to flip to that, and maybe I'll post these if you're going to put this on YouTube. Maybe I can put the link to these or something. But these are some talks and some blog posts, and so like Steve Quo has working with discovery trees. He did a whole blog on that. You know what's really interesting is James Shore, who wrote the Art of Agile Development. Is that his book?
He's got a couple of them, but yeah.
Yeah, the Art of Agile Development actually talks about FAST in his version 2, and saying that it's one of the most innovative ways that he has seen in many, many years of writing code, of producing code. And this presentation is fabulous. He actually tracked the movement of people across the different teams, and has a much more data-based presentation, and it's excellent. So that's a really good one. Yeah. Anything else? I appreciate you all being here. it didn't go as bad as I thought it would. There was only one slide that I was like, that's kind of out of place. So, okay. We're
And we had some Zoom bombers that we haven't had since the early days of COVID. So that was kind of fun.
excellent.
Yeah, they weren't as good as the original one. So we had one of our first online meetings. We just got blasted. It was a good learning experience.
That's crazy because so I run the Seattle Code Crafters meetup, and we have like 5,000 people members, and we have one really big talk a month. Oh, if I can push Llewellyn Falco's talking at the end of this month. Yes, he usually kicks off the year for us in January, but he couldn't make it. So lucky you get to find out he's going to talk about it at the end of this month. But well, I think we've had one person in the entire time that we've been online.
Bold of you to put it out there in the universe, Paige.
Yeah. Anyhow, I'm gonna stop sharing.
All right. Any last questions for Paige? All right, good stuff. Carter, is your son still around? Does he want one more wave for everybody, or did he can't talk? Huh? All right. Paige, thank you very much for sharing the story. I've heard bits and pieces of it, but I'm glad to hear the whole story.
Oh, that's not the whole story. I get another 4 hours for you. But
I don't think I have that many beers left, my friend.
Okay.
But
yeah, you're welcome.
welcome.
I very much, obviously, I think it comes across that I very much enjoy talking about it. And so anyone is more than welcome to contact me, and I'm happy to answer any other questions or have discussions about, what you can take away and use in your place of business.
Oh, very cool. Thank you much. Thank you all for joining tonight. Oh, and I'm going to do one quick thing here. Do I still have it in my Slack? There we go. I'm sharing the Slack channel. We are looking for topics and for speakers for 2023. If there's something that you want to hear about, or if there's something that you want to share, please reach out to us. If you want to start practicing, maybe it's your personal growth plan where you want to start giving some talks, we would be very happy to work with you and help you present a talk and kind of get that warmed up. Paige, I think you can agree that sharing knowledge, speaking to user groups, it's a great way to help build your skills in your career.
Yeah. So there's so much good stuff came out of it. It wasn't just the process of doing fast and stuff, but I work with some amazing people. And Steve Quo, who Dustin and I have worked with, but he's been my friend for years and years. And one of the things that he and I decided some time ago when we were talking about code craftsmanship was sort of working on this idea of making your heroes your peers, right? And like, I look up to all these people like Woody Zuhl and, Tim Ottinger, and like these people that I've read their books, James Shore, I've read their books and they're amazing. And oh my gosh. And like, how do I make them my peers? How do I get to that? Well, you talk to them for one, right? And then you talk about what you know. It's amazing how many people, like sometimes I talk about test-driven development or pairing, and I think this is dumb. Everybody knows about that. Everybody's done that. And then I realize like, no, there are people that have never heard of it before still. And, so if you have something that's interesting and that you want to say it, because there are people that need to hear it. And you will say it in a different way than I will say it. And so it's really important, and it's great. It'll get you farther in your career, I guess. I'll say that. You'll make millions. or not, but
All right. Well, we'll call it there. Again, if anybody wants to hang out afterwards to ask Paige about his Lensa app and how to create your profile with AI, you can do so. But otherwise, thank you all very much. And we do not have the first week of March defined yet, but we will be coming out with that soon. So stay warm.